we are going to NASA, to the Johnson Space Center here in Houston. So let's go.
NASA astronaut Chris Cassidy.
Astronaut Chris Cassidy.
Commander Chris Cassidy.
Well, I'm astronaut Chris Cassidy. I'm a NASA astronaut. Laboratory. On the other side of that wall is the water. It's 40 feet deep. Pool for rescue and the divers, like that picture right there. They train for that stuff here in the pool. Yeah. Is super heavy. It's about, the real one's about 350 pounds. The one here is a little bit less because the guts of the backpack aren't all in it. So because of that, you can't just throw it on like clothes. They put, see that metal, there's a clock with the time underneath the Canadian flag. Then there's a metal structure. They put the suit to that, and then you put your pants on like normal, and then you go underneath and pop up into the suit itself, and then you're fixed to that structure, so you're not having to hold the entire weight yourself. And then a crane picks that whole thing up and plops the people into the water. Once you get in the water, then they disconnect you from that structure, and then off you go. And you can find where the people are. You trace this white umbilical cord and go down, and that's connected to the suit at the bottom of the pool. These different pieces of equipment are all parts of the space station. We can see that better when we go up and look down. The real International Space Station, that little bitty circular thing with the glass windows, there's not really glass windows on the real one. It's just for the pool so the safety guys can see in, but that's where you depressurize and leave the space station. To yellow rail, hand by hand, and you do have a safety tether to keep you connected, but the number one thing is don't let go of the damn yellow stuff. On the real spacewalk, there's no umbilical cord connecting you to the space station. It's just like the backpack keeps you alive. Here in the pool, we supply everything from the surface deck. But you kind of get a feel now for how big the space station is, and like I told you, it's a
control type environment. That's what this is kind of simulating a little bit. Now today is like I said, a test run, so it's not as intense. We're trying things out and going back and forth and banter and all that.
We're really glad you guys are here to take a few minutes and tell us about what goes on out here at Ellington.
Space readiness flight training, which exposes the astronauts to a lot of things that they might not be used to. In the old days, we used to select mostly pilots, test pilots. But for a while now, we've been selecting a lot of different people from different areas. The serial number that the Air Force assigned to them, and the first two numbers is the year that it was manufactured by Northrop Grumman. So 1970, so this is a 53-year-old airplane.
Wow.
We have 1960, 1963, 1965. So the reason they look so nice is we have a very good maintenance team here that takes care of them. Some people, like some medical doctors, have never been in a supersonic situation, so it gives them kind of like an idea of what that's going to feel like.
We also use it to get to Florida, so if we have training in Florida, we'll take off here early in the morning, get to Florida, do training, and we can come back. Makes it pretty convenient. SpaceX is out in California, so same thing. If you're training for a SpaceX mission, you'll take off from here at Ellington.
So you have a PFD, which is a primary flight display, FMS flight management system, and EED, which is a engine electronic display. So basically, when the airplane is on, the pilot can see everything that he needs to see right here in these two things. So everything else is kind of like a standby gauge or
pilot in the co-pilot, you get together, you figure out your plan, where you're going to go, you do the weather briefing. That's 20 minutes or so, and then you come down here, you grab your helmet and your parachute, and then walk out through this door out to the airplane, and off you go. It's pretty fast process. My cubby is taken over by someone else. I have 41 of this. And then really, the other side of the hangar is outside of the front of the space station. This is the very bow of the ship, so to speak, and it goes down the building that way. And we'll go in some of it. This portion is the European module. The other side is the Japanese module, and the U.S. contributed portions are all in the middle. We'll see that more in a second. Things like this are not just randomly here. This is an actual thing that will be worked on a spacewalk coming up. In fact, I think tomorrow. And so they probably have it here. They had a class where people were doing the mechanisms and figuring out how to operate it, and so that's why it really isn't working. The one thing that I wanted to tell you, there's no place that all astronaut training takes place, because you'll see the outside of this is very nondescript. At the pool where we came from this morning, the outside of that is to the detail of the nut, the bolt, the handrail, the wire, but inside those things are just an empty hollow thing, because we don't train in the pool for the actual day-to-day life inside. This is where we train the inside activities, and so therefore the outside, they don't need to make it look all perfect. Forward is this way. Really only matters for labeling, because you can be any orientation and fly through the sky. But we call this the bow, and that the stern, and port and starboard, so you got to know where. Is the docking module, the docking port itself. So an arriving vehicle has, both sides have this thing, and this is the size of the hatch that we pass through as people, and it's on like these springs. You can't really tell, but two big hunks of metal are coming together, and they have a lot of mass, and they're not going super fast relative to each other, but they're massive, and they bump into each other, and the springs absorb all the motion, and it settles out, and then these hooks drive and they grab each other, and it lines everything up. And there's places where electricity passes through, there's places where fluids can pass through if needed, and then we depressurize everything, or pressurize everything, and then we can transfer between the things. Which is circular, but you're in a square corridor, right? So these modules are called experiment racks, and they're kind of curved on the back, and some of them we use for cargo, so this is a whole bunch of storage, and finding stuff is actually a challenge up there. And then other racks are for experiments, like you have an experiment there. There's one kind of by Morgan where we grow stuff. And then
And you're just floating around in here.
you're floating around. And one thing is we label this as the overhead, and we label this as the deck, and this is forward, and that's aft, and that's how we identify where we are. But you can be in any orientation and float around, so you can quickly just forget about the orientation. But what's pretty fascinating is we spend so much time in this mock-up, in this actual facility, that it just feels normal to be this way, up and your feet down. So if you see astronauts, even ourselves, we always just flip to this orientation. So this thing is called the Japanese experiment module. The beautiful thing about it is they designed in an attic space. So there's when we go outside, you'll see there's a big dome up there, which is all storage and cargo, which is really, really handy. The other modules don't have designated storage spaces, so it's puffing with extra bags all over the place and things in the hallway. This little guy here is an experiment airlock, so you can open it and there's a tray that comes out, and we put experiments on there, and we can send it out without having to have a person go outside to put the experiment out there. Port on 6 faces, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then front and back. the back port is physically connected to the rest of the space station, but the front port is, like we talked about out there, where the vehicles get docked to and people come and go. When the SpaceX guys arrived, when I was on the space station, they floated through this hatch, and that's where we greeted. There's some, and then this is, because this is a nice place where we do public affairs events, so you can kind of organize yourselves here and put cameras in. Morgan, you'll appreciate this, lights and all that kind of shit, right? All good. But the nice thing about the node, this one is called Node 2. It's our home. It's basically our living room and our sleeping quarters. There's a sleeping quarters in there's 4 bunks basically. This is the one I've always slept in every mission, but they're all the same. You put your sleeping bag, you can cycle through and see it, but you put our sleeping bag on the wall here. You can put a bag or 2 of clothes and underwear and whatnot. We have
Is this
big
your room?
Yeah, we take all your, because you're there for 6 months, so that's a lot of underwear, a lot of socks, a lot of t-shirts, and you have those in bags elsewhere. And then one way I did it is once a week I'd go get clean stuff and have a small bag and have that be with me, and then kind of change it.
What do you do with the dirty clothes?
Throw them away. Yeah, no laundry.
Like through space?
Well, we throw them in the trash, and eventually it burns up with the cargo ship. Yeah. And then, so we have a laptop in here, pictures of your family and stuff. You know, so Peggy's been up on the wall. You don't lay down. The interesting thing is, when you know you're adapted to zero gravity, is you get in your sleeping bag, you zip it up, close your eyes, and you mentally go to lying down, even though you're on the wall. Your brain just kind of takes you there, and that's when it would take a week or 2, but then you know you're just relaxed and you're sleeping. It's weird how the brain works. Yeah. So this is Node 2, docking and connection to other modules, sleeping. We do experiments here. This is kind of a permanently set up workbench, so there's tools here. On the real one, there's all the toolkits and stuff. And then storage kind of all around here, storage under there. And then now that's forward. So now we're moving back, we're moving aft. And so we're going from Node 2 into the US laboratory. Even though here in the building there's a gap, there's a platform, just picture these two. So we'll go out and we'll walk around the outside down to the Russians. But so just while you're looking here, so it goes US lab, which is the next one, and then that terrible salmon color is Node 1, which is exact same size as this one with docking modules all around, and it has the airlock and another thing we'll see there. And then beyond the salmon color, there's a circle.
Yes.
That's where the Russian part starts, and we'll walk down there too. But just this is a good way to get a feel for the size of the whole thing breaking, and alarms will go off or smoke will go there, and and these guys are evaluating us responding to those failures, and then after that session of whatever couple hours, we'll come out here, debrief them, and say, okay, well, you could have done this better, you could have done that better, you know, oh, how did you guys think you did? Well, we felt a little clunky the way we responded to the fire, blah, blah, blah. So all that real hands-on training is what happens here, and the instructor cadre sit out here to make all that happen. Departments are connected together as well, and if you look, this is the node 1, as I mentioned. That's our kitchen. And so there's a table right around there where food is, and water dispenser, and those gray boxes are all boxes of food. And then on the other side is the airlock where we do put the spacesuit on. And then on this side is a thing called Node 3, and that's exercise and toilet. So the treadmill is that green thing on the wall. It seems funny to have the treadmill be on the wall, but it doesn't matter.
Oh yeah, that's true.
You just hook yourself to it with the bungee cords, and you run. That's probably the most fatiguing thing about a 6-month stay up there, is every minute of every day is scheduled by somebody else that thinks that's the best plan, and they do a great job, but
No sleeping in.
yeah, it's side and the Russian side, and you can see it starts to look different. So right here in the middle, or exactly in the middle, you can look that way and look through the Russian side. You can look that way. Now, we're in the Russian side. This is called the service module. This is where the Russians hang out. And you saw how much space was on the U.S. side, pretty spacious. The 3 Russians live in this compartment for 6 months. There's that middle section that we just walked past around on the outside. In reality, it's completely full of cargo. There's enough room for a person to float through on top of the bags, but you don't stop there unless you're digging something out of a bag. So it's a different experience for the cosmonauts than those on the U.S. side. So the 3 of them are living here. This is their kitchen table. This is their water dispenser. Their food is stored here. And there are 2 sleeping quarters, but you heard me say there's 3 Russians. So where does the 3rd one sleep? One of them sleeps with in the art and down there in one of the 4. And they've since added a 3rd Russian sleep station on another module. So now the Russians can sleep, their whole crew. This is the Russian toilet. It's very, very tiny. But yeah, so now we've gone from the very front of the space station all the way to the back.
The first one of these out around the moon last November in an unmanned test flight. And the crew's been picked for the next mission, the Artemis 2 mission, which will have 4 folks on it, 3 Americans, 1 Canadian. And this is in the launch orientation, so this would be on top of the rocket. And so when you launch, you're on your back, and that the G-forces are pushing you, and so you're laying down on your back. You can see those chairs there. That's the commander and pilot's chair. And you can see that there's a place up there, your knees would come up, and then your feet are up above. There are 2 other crew members. The mission specialists are in 2 more chairs down here, so you can see where their helmets go in those cradles.
Yeah, wow.
All of their, once you get into space, you can get out of your spacesuit, and then you can take apart the chairs to make up more room in the cabin. And all of your supplies and things are in lockers. If you can peek in there and you can look down and see all of these lockers.
It's actually a sunglass. It's not gold anymore, I can say with some confidence. It's a couple of alloys now, but originally like the Apollo gold mask, that was the best thing. You can literally pound gold flat enough to see through in a bright sunlight. The sun gets so bright that it'll actually affect your eyes and kind of thing. Yeah. And they actually have, you can see on the tops here, you can see one kind of pulled down here. They actually have hard shields they can pull down too, on the sides and in the front if it's really bright. Because sometimes you want to pull up the gold shield, but you don't want the full sun, so you can adjust it on the front. The new suits will have that as well. They're kind of modular. Yeah, they have like a top part. We have different sizes of the top. It's called a hard upper torso. It's very difficult to get into. We've had crew members dislocate their shoulder getting in and out of them because they're so tough. But then the arm lengths can all be different. We've got several versions of the gloves that we do. In fact, we still customize gloves once in a while.
Does he get
the
to
legs
keep
are longer.
any element of it?
Technically, no. There's some things like, hey, you literally have it like that.
Now a sense of scale of size of capsule. So with that in mind, think about 3 people in this thing. It's about 10 minutes.
And how hot do you get inside?
It gets pretty hot, but it's hard to tell because we have the suit on and there's air flowing through there, but you're sweating your butts off. It's probably 90. It's like a hot day in Houston. Inside there.
He just won, and then he called me every day like 2 times. Karen Nyberg. She's married to an astronaut.
Really?
Yeah, in fact, Chris he came up on the Dragon. So he came up on the Dragon when he was up in space.
We're inside the flight control room at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas.
This is a real live flight director, NASA flight director. He's my favorite.
This is the primary team that flies the International Space Station, but it is an international team. We have control centers in Huntsville, Alabama. We have one in Scuba, Japan. one in Munich, Germany, and one in Moscow. Capcom is talking to the astronauts. The Capcom is also responsible for being the eyes and ears of the crew on board on the ground. So they'll tell the flight director of the team, like, hey, this crew member is probably bored right now. Let's give them something to do. Or this person's really busy. Let's not bother them with this. Let's give it to this other crew member. So that's really the Capcom's main goal. One thing I'll point out here, you'll see some people have a chessboard up. That is for operational reasons. We're actually competing with one of the astronauts on board, Woody Hobart, in a chess game between mission control and space. He kicked our butts last game, so we're trying to get revenge here by working together and actually beating him, but it's going to be
Is the
fun.
flight director in charge of that move?
We are, yes. We consolidate inputs. And
What if Cronus is a better chess player
we
than
do
the flight
consolidate
director?
inputs and we work together and we come up with a strategy. Jeff Redigan, the current flight director, he's a chess grandmaster too, so he's got it. But you know.